online using the GoToMeeting chat window or question window, and we've got a couple of people standing by to assist in answering those. If we don't get them answered during the session, we will endeavour to follow up afterwards. We'll also be doing Q&A at the end as well, so hopefully I'll be able to stop talking and answer a few specific questions. And a final reminder, please fill in the survey. We do these to get customer feedback, and we want to make them better all the time. So we'd like to hear from you and endeavour to incorporate your feedback into future events. Okay, with that said, I'd like to get started on the AWS and Glacier launch. Okay, so if I was to sum up Glacier in one slide, it's this slide here: low-cost archive storage in the cloud. Essentially, that's what Amazon Glacier has been designed for. It's been built around customer feedback. It's part of the AWS storage family, which we'll take a quick tour through in just a couple of minutes. Wanted to start off with a couple of definitions, though. Archiving and backup. It's important to understand the difference between these two. I'm sure most of the people on the call do, but just to sort of reinforce this, archiving is a process of moving data that's no longer active into a separate data storage device for long-term retention. Typically, in an industry, the IT industry, where 3 years is a long time, typically we're seeing archives kept for decades or multiple decades. They're generally indexed and have search capabilities, so that files or part of those files can be retrieved and located. Backup, on the other hand, is making copies of data which may actually be used to restore the original after a data loss event. Compare and contrast the access frequency of backup with archiving. Typically, archiving is, or archives are stored in long-term storage for long-term retention, as we highlighted, but are typically very rarely accessed, whereas backups may be accessed on a regular basis, depending on the data loss, be it user-driven, data deleted, or corruption. So the agenda today, we wanted to quickly run through the AWS storage options. I want to take you through some partner solutions around Glacier and also some customer case studies. AWS storage options. So most of you will be hopefully familiar with this. We have, in this instance, 3 storage options. We have our Elastic Block Store. That's our high-performance block storage system, which is generally connected to EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud servers, ranging from 1 gigabyte to 1 terabyte in size. Simple storage service, our highly scalable object store, and Glacier. You can see down there at the bottom the continuum of very fast instance disks, fast object storage, and then Glacier, as the name suggests, slow and frequent access. Just stepping through those one by one. The paradigm for Elastic Block Store is performance. So it's a file system. It can operate very, very fast, up to 2,000 IOPS per volume. It's generally proximate to the servers that it's connected to, visible only to your EC2 instances, not accessible from the net directly. Essentially, it's helpful to think of it as like a disk drive for the EC2 compute servers. The other thing it's also able to do is you're also able to snapshot Elastic Block Store to S3 in terms of creating snaps, and finally to its persistent storage. So if your EC2 instance should happen to go away, the Elastic Block Store persists, and you're able to then attach it to another EC2 instance. Amazon Simple Storage Service S3, highly scalable. One of our fastest growing services. It's this year reached 2 trillion unique customer objects stored in S3. The key characteristics of S3 is it offers 11 nines of durability. For those of you that don't know, durability is the chances of when you put something into a storage system, the chance of getting it back again. While some of you may think it's 100%, those of us that have lost hard drives or lost data realize that's not always the case. It's like all Amazon services, accessible programmatically via APIs, and it's essentially a web store. I want to emphasize it's not a file system, so you don't have file locking and the like. It's an object store. That makes it extremely fast when it's serving or loading data, and highly available, as we highlighted with the durability earlier, but not really suitable for random read and writes. You can see the pricing there, starting at 12.5 cents per gigabit per month stored. And obviously there's also security. The other thing about S3 with its 11 nines of durability is that when you put an object into S3, we store that data across multiple availability zones within a region. Amazon has this concept of infrastructure regions. Each region consists of multiple availability zones. Each availability zone is a cluster of data centers that are discrete and separate from each other. That is, each availability zone's on a different floodplain, a different power grid, and the like. With EC2, for example, when you spin up a server, you have the choice of availability zones. With S3, when you put the object into S3, we take care of, for want of a better term, copying it around those various availability zones, and that's how we provide the 11 nines of durability. We make multiple copies of your data, but keeping it within the region so that you don't have to. And that's one of the key characteristics of S3. We had a lot of customer feedback around S3. A lot of people really appreciated the high durability, but wanted to see if we could provide a lesser performing service for a lower price. And from that genesis, Glacier was born. So Glacier is a long-term object archive, once again with 11 nines of durability, but with a much lower cost per gigabyte. In Australia, I'm delighted to announce that Glacier will be at 1.2 cents per gigabyte per month. But the key, I guess, difference from S3 is the 3 to 5 hour response time rather than a millisecond response time. And so essentially it's helpful to think of Glacier as a long-term cold data store. I want to talk about some of the benefits that Glacier delivers. When you think about the sort of area that it's playing in with regards to long-term archives, we think these sort of 6 minutes are very key. Low cost is obviously very important. So it's 1.2 cents per gigabyte per month, but more importantly, no upfront capital commitment. So there's no need to purchase tape drives, tape silos, media, or the like. Essentially, what it does is once you ingest data into S3, we take care of managing it for you, and you have no other cost apart from the ongoing monthly cost. It's also very, very durable, as we highlighted before. It's that level of durability which we believe is unmatched. That means that customers obviously choosing Glacier for their deep archives. It's the certainty of knowing that you're going to get the data back, rather than the sort of tape lotto that a lot of enterprise customers are playing at the moment, when you need to retrieve a file, say, from 5 years ago. First of all, you've got to locate the tape, and then hope that it's in a good enough condition to read the data off. The other element there too is that because Glacier is effectively medialess, you're not having to worry about media evolution or tape drive evolution. So as I said earlier, in a world where IT, 3 years is a long time, when you've got a 10-year or a 15 or 20-year archive of digital data, the media formats that data might be stored on may well not be readable in today's technology. For example, while I have a lot of vinyl records at home, I don't tend to have a record player anymore to play them, and it's a very similar situation for a lot of businesses, in that unless the business is migrating their media collection on a regular basis, typically best practice is 2 to 3 years of a media refresh, and incurring the cost of doing that, then the ability to read and reliably read the data on those tapes goes down dramatically. Additionally, best practice also highlights the need to sample the media collection or the tape collection on a regular basis to identify any potential problems with regards to tape perishing and the like. So I guess that then plays into the flexibility of Glacier. It's the ability to add any amount of data quickly. You can easily expire and delete without handling media, as we highlighted. And you're also able to delete data, as I highlighted, from Glacier, and again, stop paying for it immediately. So the ability to add any amount of data means that Glacier is able to scale, and it removes the issue around capacity planning. And so, for example, as data usage grows and more and more data is stored and collected and therefore archived, so we're seeing increasing stress put on tape libraries, the ability to, or the need to store high volumes of data, and then capacity planning becomes an issue. Literally, I've spoken to customers who were running out of space in their data centers to house another tape drive or house their media collection, and they were interested in Glacier because it took that kind of, should we say, rock bottom planning and undifferentiated heavy lifting away from them. The ability to organize stuff in a data center is something that, whilst it might be a skill that's required, generally doesn't add a materially amount or add a lot of business value to the company that the people are doing it for. Additionally, Glacier is very secure, and so all archives immediately encrypted using 256-bit encryption once they're uploaded into Glacier, and we have a wide range of certifications of our infrastructure, data centers, and the like that are available for people to look at in our security white papers. I guess one of the key things is the simplicity of Glacier. You eliminate the need to own multiple generations of tape drive hardware, for example. And again, I've seen customers who have very robust archival policies reduced to looking on eBay for older generation tape drive spare parts, because once the hardware goes out of support, not only does it get very expensive to have a service agreement on that hardware, oftentimes customers are left with having to maintain a virtual museum so that they can access those old tapes or face a costly migration. And indeed, there are a number of companies around the world that make a lot of money on migrating massive tape libraries to the latest version while they are able to rationalize down the number of tapes. It certainly doesn't solve the problem, because as we know, the evolution of storage standards continues apace, and the problem starts happening again. And finally, I think this is a sort of not really perceived as a major benefit right now, but ultimately will be, as we see increasing amounts of data gathered and kept, and an increasing ability of companies to forensically analyze that data. What a lot of them are lacking are long enough time periods or big enough samples of data to identify trends and information. And so typically the trade-off in the past has always been, if I want to keep that data, I've got to decrease its utility. That is, I have my data, it might be transactional data, it might be log data, I've got to archive that. But in order to archive it, I need to put it into a form that I can't easily use it. So I've got to chop it up into tape-sized chunks and then store that in a salt mine at the dusty corner of a data center and the like. One of the key benefits of Glacier is that it's right next to some of the largest compute and analysis infrastructure in the world, being the rest of AWS services, and the ability to retrieve samples of that data into something like a S3 and then do analysis on that data, or even monetize that data, is something that uniquely, a service like Glacier provides. So those are the benefits of Glacier. We think it's a dramatic change from historically customers have been able to manage data retention and data lifecycle, and will deliver key benefits. How does it all work? Well, like all of Amazon services, it's accessible and able to be driven through our APIs. Essentially, the customer is able to use a console, our console, or obviously command line and applications, to create a vault. The vault is the Glacier equivalent of a bucket, and into that vault you configure the various access policies via identity access management, and then upload archives. So the atomic unit of a Glacier implementation is archive, and that may consist of a tar or a zip of multiple objects. And then those archives are uploaded and stored into Glacier. They take between 3 and 5 hours to be up and confirmed in Glacier, and ditto for the retrieval process. They're retrieved in 3 to 5 hours after being requested, and so because this is a lagged process, you have the concept of a job, and the customer's able to initiate a job that may then be tracked via a notification policy through using Amazon's simple notification service, and then that job is then downloaded to a holding area where it can then be transferred into S3 or downloaded to an on-premise application. So what are the use cases we're seeing Glacier used in? Clearly, these are three of the primary ones, and I think I've talked about tape replacement already in terms of the pain points that customers are having. In all the customer visits I see and the infrastructure managers I talk to, very few of them are loving the amount of tape that they have in their business and are wanting to increase that. Most customers are looking to eliminate tape and the pain and complexity and variability that it brings around things like capacity planning, capital budgeting, media formats, etc., etc. Digital preservation is another area as well. As a lot of the keepers of records, libraries, archives, museums, and the like, increasingly digitizing their collections, there becomes a need to preserve that information in terms of its digital content. And so we're seeing increasingly the concept emerge of active preservation, because whilst you don't have the media perishing issue, you do have the need to monitor what format you're keeping those files in. For example, the PDF format of 10 years ago is quite different from the PDF format of today as these formats evolve and the like. And so we're seeing the emergence of systems that are assisting customers, and particularly these organizations, in managing the digital preservation of their digital records. And finally, obviously, an offsite archive. And so as customers are increasingly backing up larger and larger amounts, so those increased data volumes are flowing through the storage tiers. And so we're seeing that while customers' tape libraries are growing massively, it's really where the buck stops in terms of being able to manage the ongoing storage. And ultimately what happens is customers start needing to compromise on the fidelity of their archives. That is, they don't do their regular migrations because it simply gets too costly. They don't do their tape sampling. They don't do their media refreshes. And once you do that, you've sort of then got to ask yourself, why are you actually keeping that data if the ability to retrieve that data is diminishing on an ongoing basis? One of the questions I like to ask my customers is look, you managed to find that tape from 5 years ago. You managed to find a drive to put it into. You've got to retrieve that file or restore that file. You're about to put it in the drive. How are you feeling? Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling worried? Or are you feeling lucky? And so I have to admit that most often, most customers are feeling quite concerned when they're at that level. One of the other things we've also released in releasing Glacier in Australia is a service called S3 Glacier. Essentially what this is, we gave the Glacier APIs over to the S3 development team and let them have at it. Essentially what it allows customers to do is to, within S3, within your bucket of S3, either standard storage, 11 nines, or reduced redundancy storage, 4 nines, you're able to apply a policy to that bucket. And that policy then can be time-based. So for example, you might say, after 30 days, everything in this bucket that's older than 30 days, age to Glacier. Now that has a couple of benefits. One of the things I highlighted earlier was that Glacier is very bare bones. It's very low cost and it's very rudimentary in what it does. And so, for example, you don't get an index with Glacier or a catalog with Glacier. That's provided by our partners, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But with the S3 interface, obviously through the console, you can do a list and see all the objects. And the way it's presented when you migrate S3 objects into Glacier, it's essentially presented as a class of service. And so you'll see the object in S3, but it will have the class Glacier, and you'll be paying effectively an order of magnitude lower cost, but face a 3 to 5 hour response time in terms of retrieving that data. We've had a lot of customers, particularly those that access our infrastructure via APIs, really take up this service, and it's really helped them do large-scale object migrations into Glacier. And so that gives rise to sort of the concept of tiered storage in the cloud. You can see how we at the very bottom left there have short-term buckets, RRS, reduced redundancy store. That is where the objects are copied less aggressively around the region, and we only offer 4 nines of durability for about 2/3 of the cost. You then have normal redundancy, where you might have data that isn't easily reconstituted or able to be replaced. And then obviously you have the concept of the long-term vault Glacier. I just want to have a quick step through now Glacier costings. This is a topic we have a lot of questions on, and generally a lot of chatter. It's quite a misunderstood area. I'm not going to answer every question on this today, but hopefully I want to just highlight the range of costs that Glacier is subject to, and give you some context around how those costs are levied. Essentially, there's 4 key areas of Glacier costings. Storage pricing, that's the one that is most often quoted. The 1.2 cents per gigabyte per month is our storage pricing. There's also request pricing. This is a charge based on the number of transactions, uploads and retrievals, and I'll go into what that is in a second. The next one is the one that is most misunderstood. This is the data retrieval charge. So this is bandwidth based. This is based on how much you retrieve, how quickly. There's an amount granted free per day, and there's a peak rate measured over 4 hours. That's a one-time charge per month based on the peak download rate. And then there's the standard charge with most Amazon services if you do indeed take the data out of AWS, the data transfer charge. And so to put some numbers on that, storage pricing, 1.2 cents per gigabyte per month in Sydney. That's the same as Narita. EU is 1.1, and the US is 1 cent. Request pricing is 6 cents per 1,000 objects uploaded or retrieved. The data retrieval charges are bandwidth based, so it's a one-off cost, as I said, based on peak bandwidth consumed. Now, there is a free tier to this, and that is 5% of the total volume you have stored. You're able to retrieve free per month, and that's prorated daily. If you go above that volume, then you're charged at 1 cent times 720 hours in a month times the number of gigabytes per hour. That is your peak bandwidth. I'll show you how spreading out your retrievals over a longer period of time can dramatically reduce those costs. And finally, there's the data transfer out of AWS. There's 19 cents per gigabyte if you're transferring out in a standard manner, or if you're connected via Direct Connect, that cost in Australia is a flat rate of 4 cents per gigabyte transferred out. I highlight though that that's not outside of Glacier, that's out of AWS. You may do a retrieval from Glacier and elect to put that data into S3, and the data transfer out of AWS therefore doesn't occur. You don't incur any charges for that. I wanted to sort of quickly show you here the results from a calculator that we have here. You can see there the total. This is a sample customer who has 10 terabytes stored in Glacier across 1,000 archives, so 10 gigabyte per archive. The cost there, 1.2 cents per gigabyte. So the storage charge per month is $120.32 per month for that 10 terabytes. They're able to do a free restore per month of 500 gigabytes. That's 5% of the 10 terabytes. And that equates to being able to retrieve 16 gigabytes per day. So the job size, if this customer were to retrieve 500 gigabytes per day, then they would be faced, if they did that in 4 hours, you can see the retrieval cost would be just over $1,000. But if they were able to spread that out, say, to 48 hours, you can see how that cost drops dramatically. Obviously, because 500 is 5% of 10 terabytes, if you did it over 30 days, the retrieval cost element of this would be 0. I'm sure that's generating a lot of questions, and a lot of people are going to have questions on that. We will be providing this calculator to all of our solution architects and salespeople. I encourage you, if you have a specific example, that you approach them, who will be able to provide assistance in that. Also, too, I think it's worth remembering here that the original concept of Glacier is that Glacier is a long-term archive. We're not expecting customers to draw down 5% per month. In fact, as we've done a lot of analysis around various tape archives, we've found that most customers typically retrieve around about 2% on average of their total volumes. obviously that's peaky, and that's why we've built this very flexible model to allow for customers that are able, if they need it urgently, they can get it, but if they're able to plan and map out their retrievals, they're able to save a lot of money. So in summary then, the storage pricing I think is quite straightforward, cents per gigabyte per month. The request pricing, also straightforward. It's cents per 1,000 retrievals or uploads. The data retrieval is calculated on the peak request rate, the biggest single request in the month, subtracting the amount you get for free. And once again, that's a one-off charge. And then to manage your costs, I think the sort of key watchword here is spread your large retrievals over periods of time, because that allows the cost to if possible, stay under the 5% per month, but more importantly, you're able to minimize that cost with a bit of planning. Okay, let's talk about some partner solutions now. So we've identified that Glacier solves a lot of key issues for customers. We've highlighted that it's very cost effective, but then in order to access that benefit, there are a number of hurdles that customers need to overcome. Typically, most customers' archives are sitting on-premise or on a location, certainly not within the Amazon cloud. And so you need an ability to get that data into the cloud. The two key services we utilize here is AWS Direct Connect, and that's where we surface points of interconnect in Equinix Sydney 3, being 10 gig and 1 gig ports. We have a number of partners, which I'll take you through in a second. Then there's the ability to do AWS import-export. That's where you're able to ship us hard drives, and we load those into your bucket for you. You know, it's often been said, never underestimate the bandwidth of a FedEx box. We don't offer import-export here in Australia. However, we do have a partner, Bulletproof Networks, who do offer a very similar service where you're able to work with them to build a project whereby you're able to send them large volumes of data on hard drives, and they will load that into your part of the Amazon cloud for you. That's a new service from Bulletproof Networks, and we're very happy to be working with them on that. In terms of Direct Connect, these partners will assist you in connecting your location into our location. Okay, so obviously you can see the logos there: Vocus, Megaport, Cinenet, very big in the media industry, AAPT, and Vibe Networks in New Zealand. These partners are very familiar with the processes required to manage things like cross connects within the Equinix data center, and essentially what this means is you don't have to have any presence in the Equinix data center in order to be able to connect to us. They have connected many dozens of customers around Australia, and we thoroughly endorse and recommend that you work with these guys to get either a 1 gig or a 10 gig direct connection into our services. It certainly is the most easiest way of transferring large volumes of data, and we have many customers in Australia that have taken up this service through these partners. In terms of then getting the data into us, in terms of what format, how do you transfer? As I said earlier, all of Amazon's services are accessible via APIs, and so one of the most basic ways is if you have a strong development bent to your organization, the ability to write application using those APIs and the software development kits that you can see here, the various languages. But for most enterprises, though, I'd have to emphasize that most enterprises prefer to take a plug-and-play approach. And so for that reason, we've worked with a select number of vendors here in Australia to provide solutions around Glacier. Those vendor partners are listed here. All of them natively integrate directly into Glacier. They each have different strengths and I guess features that they emphasize. Just to sort of talk to one of them for a second, Riverbed. And so what you have here is the concept of their whitewater device. The Riverbed whitewater device gets put on premise. It's either a virtual machine or an appliance. It presents locally as a CIFS or NFS share and has an amount of local storage. The idea is that you back up to that, that device, the network share that it presents, and it will then run inline deduplication on unstructured data. And they often can get between 10 to 20 times dedupe. What this means is you could, for example, put a petabyte on the Riverbed whitewater. The deduplication will mean that only 100 terabytes gets written to Glacier. And so instead of having a bill of $10,000 a month for, sorry, $12,000 a month for a petabyte on Amazon Glacier, you'll actually be it only costing you $1,200 a month because only 1 1/10 of the data is going up there. Another key feature of the whitewater device is that the customer is able to maintain and retain their own security keys, and so customers often prefer to encrypt the data before it comes up to us, and so you have a double level of encryption. You have the encryption on-premise with the whitewater device and the keys over an HTTPS link, and then it's encrypted again at rest within Glacier. They also have a local cache for recently archived data. So whilst the backup server will write to the whitewater, that cache will immediately get copied up to Glacier. The cache is still available if a immediate restore is needed or an immediate retrieval is needed. And obviously you're able to juggle the size of that cache depending on how much you want to be able to get retrieval or access to things like land speed access back from your archives. And we think the Riverbed Whitewater is one of the premier ways of loading information into Glacier, the data into Glacier. I'd also highlight too that all of those calculations I was doing before regarding the 5% free and all that sort of stuff, they do that automatically and can set thresholds so that they'll be able to warn you if you're about to exceed a free threshold or a nominated threshold in terms of cost, and greatly assist in cost management. In addition to the vendors and how we get stuff into Glacier, because obviously a big data migration isn't a trivial process, we've also identified and have working with a number of systems integration partners or service provider partners around Australia and New Zealand. These partners are all very experienced in Glacier, and they each bring their own unique set of skills and services. Some of them offer Glacier as a service where they will bundle up say for example, the provision of a whitewater device and the service itself, and they're able to present that to you in a ongoing cost per gigabyte per month. Others will provide systems integration services to enable you to get the devices installed and up and running. And we recommend all of these guys, and we encourage you to reach out if one of them are your partners and ask them about Glacier. Finally, I wanted to have a quick chat about a couple of customer case studies. Obviously, Atlassian is sort of the darling of the startup community here in Australia, being one of the guys that made it big in the US. They use Glacier for backup and archive. Many of you will know of Atlassian's Bitbucket free source code hosting service. Obviously, as they grow, the amount of data that's stored there is increasing, and they need to make sure that they've got reliable, cost-effective archives of their code and their libraries available. And so they've selected Glacier for that reason, and have been migrating large volumes of data from S3 to Glacier. Many of you may have heard of Nearmap. Nearmap is a mapping company based in Australia. What they do is they capture high-res aerial images of cities at different time snaps. And so, for example, you might be able to look at a building on Nearmap sort of this month. They might also have a historical view of it from 2 months ago, 2 months before, and the like. And so that time-based snapping or snapshots provide a very powerful series of images and tools for customers. One of the key use cases that they were able to provide to their customers was, for example, the solar panel rebate. Whilst it's possible to employ a squadron of people to go around all of Sydney or all of New South Wales identifying those houses that have actually purchased and installed solar panels and are eligible for the rebate, with Nearmap's high-definition imagery, it's much more trivial to be able to look for those on people's roofs and then match that against those that have claimed the rebate. They utilized Nearmap utilized Glacier to store terabytes and terabytes of raw digital information. The way they work is they capture the photos and then run it through their software and application to stitch them together in various resolutions. The original files are very useful because they may have a new job that comes with that needs a specific set of files, or they may have a new customer that comes that wants a specific resolution. And so being able to retrieve those files from archive and then reprocess them if, for example, processing techniques improve, mean that the data is incredibly useful. It was the provision of Glacier, which meant that they we're able to avoid the trade-off of cost versus keep those files. And so in terms of their business, Glacier certainly forms a key part of their provision of their service. So where to go next? Well, we've got the ANZ Glacier Lunch and Learn series, as I see here, coming soon to a city near you. We're in Auckland on the 17th of October, that's tomorrow. We're in Brisbane next Tuesday, Perth on Thursday, Sydney the following Tuesday, and Melbourne the following Wednesday. Encourage you to come along there. This will be a very similar presentation to what you've seen today. We'll probably go into a bit more detail, and obviously because it's face-to-face, there'll be a little bit more interactivity and the ability to ask questions of both myself and the various partners as well. I encourage you to register at that link there, aws.amazon.com, APAC LNL, Next Gen Storage, and hope to see you there. The venues are filling up fast, so I encourage you to register quickly. Or contact one of our launch partners. All of these guys are very capable and skilled in Glacier, and indeed the various vendors around them, particularly Riverbed. And so, you know, absolutely these guys will be able to help you with Glacier migration or transition. And they're, as I said, they're strongly endorsed by us. So with that said, it's a pretty brisk sprint through the information here today. I will hand back to the moderator for questions. And I'll mute myself just to save you all from hearing my voice for a couple of minutes. Just been speaking to the Brains Trust. We encourage you to pop any questions through on chat, and we'll do our best to answer them over the call or on. Just received a question, when do we think import-export will be available in Sydney? Well, it's obviously available now through our colleagues at Bulletproof. We encourage you to use that service. It's a great way of transmitting large volumes of data. In terms of being provided by Amazon, we don't have any time frame for that at this stage. I'm sorry. Just been asked to put up the web link. I'll jump back a couple of slides to do that for you all. There it is there. Another question, are there any comparison examples against traditional storage archives? We have some TCO models. My only hesitation in strongly recommending that is that each customer is different in terms of the costs and the burden costs that they impose. What is easy is the ability. What we can do is highlight the cost elements that we believe should be included in a calculation, and then work with you or one of our partners could work with you to identify what the amount of those costs are for you. So, for example, you may have free data center for example. So power and cooling might not be a thing that you put into your model. And like I said, every customer is different in terms of the cost they're currently facing, but certainly we can identify the range of costs and then work with you to tailor that model to identify the costs in your situation. Okay, I've now had a couple of questions shared with me, so I'll see if I can go answer these. Can you move data from Glacier between regions? You can't move it from one Glacier archive to another. You would need to retrieve it into S3 or restore it into S3 first, and then using S3 copy, you're able to transfer it between regions. So the answer is yes, with a couple of steps in the middle. What kind of interface is presented to users that would allow us to browse and select files and folders for restoration? The APIs obviously are there, but there's a number of companies that have written applications to do that. So, for example, Cloudberry, I highlighted earlier, Cloudberry Explorer presents Glacier as a drive. You're able to use it as a target. Obviously, the Riverbed device presents Glacier as a CIFS NFS share, and Veeam just has Glacier as a native destination. I would, though, caution against using Glacier as a file share, because Glacier is not structured to be used in an interactive way like that, and you may run the risk of inadvertently incurring costs around retrievals that you don't intend to do. There's also a penalty for Glacier in terms of if you delete an object or remove an object in the first 30 days. Our services are hosted in Amazon AWS. If we store the data on Glacier, how do we ensure that it is not the same data center we are looking at offsite storage? Yeah, we take care of that for you. So what we do is, as I highlighted earlier, when we open Amazon infrastructure within a region like Sydney, we have that in multiple availability zones. Each availability zone is a cluster of data centers, and so across those data centers, we for want of a better term, copy your object. Glacier and S3 are designed to sustain the concurrent loss of your data in two of those data centers simultaneously and still be able to return your object to you. That's why we offer that 11 nines of durability, and we do that so that you don't have to. So quick look here. Any plans to release an Amazon VTL? I've got no plans to announce it at this stage. Any gateway service to transfer data to S3 from on-premise? Well, we highlighted in the presentation, obviously, the Riverbed Whitewater. Obviously, Veeam can go to S3 as well as Glacier. There's a much wider range of services or applications that can write to S3. From something as trivial as TNT drive, which mounts S3 as a shared drive on your laptop, right up to, like I said, the highest devices from people like Panzura and/or Satera and/or Riverbed. What benefits do consulting partners receive if their customers sign up with Glacier? I'll have to refer to my friends in the partner team for that, I'm sorry, but I will come back to you, Charlie. Any gateway service to transfer data from on-premise to Glacier? I assume when you say gateway service, you're meaning an Amazon delivered gateway service, not a partner delivered one. I guess that's a similar question to the Amazon VTL question we've just had. We have nothing to announce around that at this stage. Okay, the pace of questions seems to be slowing down. I'm more than happy to stay on for a few more minutes and answer any more that come in. We'll endeavour to get back to you. Hopefully you've provided your email addresses. We'll endeavour to get back to you to answer those. Here's another one. To use the whitewater device, is it preferred to have a direct connect? Look, it's preferred but not necessary. The whitewater device just will work over an IP link. However, you might want to think about the volumes of data that you're sending over that link, and also too, if it's a shared internet link, we would say the rest of the office. While that might be good to get up and running, as part of a robust archival solution, you would probably want to utilize a direct connect. I might add that the direct connect services from those partners that I highlighted are getting increasingly great value. In terms of a robust enterprise-grade solution, we'd recommend a direct connect. However, I realise that not all customers are after that sort of solution, and so one of the great features of the Riverbed Whitewater, along with a lot of other devices, is the ability to schedule archive and backup. So you might better do that to a quieter time on your internet connection. And so it's preferred but not necessary. I guess with that, there don't seem to be any more questions. It seems to have slowed to a trickle. I'd like to do two things. First of all, remind you all to fill in the survey. Please tell us what we've done well and what we can do better in running this webinar. We very much value your feedback. And two, I'd like to personally thank you for attending today. It's a pretty exciting time for us in terms of Glacier finally being available in the US, in Australia. It's something that our customers, you guys, have been asking for a lot, and we're just delighted to be able to respond by bringing it to Australia, and we look forward to working with most of you on working out how you can take advantage of this great service. I'd like to thank you again for joining the call and wish you all a good day.